Hello everyone, thank you for attending today's webinar, Modernizing Life Science Manufacturing with Machine Learning, presented by Amazon Web Services. I'm Patrick Buckner from AWS and I'll be moderating this webinar. Our speakers today are Casper Larsen. He is the Chief Technology Architect from Novo Nordisk. Mr. Larsen has over 20 years of industrial engineering experience and is now focused on GMP-regulated life science manufacturing with Novo Nordisk. We'll also hear from Gilad Langer, who's Vice President at Bigfinite. Dr. Langer comes to us with a diverse background in research, software development, and product strategy in the manufacturing industry, and is currently focused on bringing advanced analytics and artificial intelligence to life sciences manufacturing. So just a few technical notes before we begin. If you'd like to download the slide deck, please click the Resources List button at the bottom of your screen. The webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your volume is up. You can find additional answers to some common technical issues located in the Help button at the bottom of your screen. And this webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand within 24 hours after the event. We will follow the presentations with a Q&A session, so please submit your questions using the Q&A button on the left side of your screen. Okay, let's begin. So let's run through our learning objectives for today. First, we'll review what's driving life sciences manufacturing to change. We'll also explore how companies are gaining new insights from data analytics. Next, we'll dive deeper into the unique value that machine learning brings to optimizing manufacturing. And finally, we'll run through specific examples of how this has been applied in industry. So as you might be aware, we're currently in the fourth industrial revolution. And by Industry 4.0, we mean cyber physical systems, the Internet of Things, cloud computing, and cognitive computing. The goal of Industry 4.0, or Pharma 4.0 as it's often referred to in our industry, is modular smart factories. Smart factories use cyber physical systems to monitor physical processes and create a virtual copy of the physical world. This enables decentralized decisions and greater insights from data. But why modernize manufacturing and life sciences? There are three dynamics triggering life science manufacturers to look closely at how AWS and the analytics capabilities that come along with it can improve operations. First, the opportunity to improve operations and the financial pressure to do so. So as the era of the blockbuster drug is fading, life science companies are feeling pressure to become more efficient while they invest heavily in R&D and M&A activities. This underscores an already known need to reduce waste and make better use of data. Secondly, new products demand new approaches. So unique challenges of manufacturing, precision medicine are causing companies to completely rethink their supply chains. So with CAR-T, we've arrived at the proverbial batch of one. Many of the production approaches used in traditional pharma will not be adequate for precision medicine or biologic drug production. Third, regulatory expectations. So regulatory groups are demanding life science manufacturers modernize their control strategies. Concerns around drug shortages, recalls, and counterfeit drugs have activated regulatory bodies to enact new regulations and raised expectations to have consistent control and real-time understanding of critical quality metrics. So what are the enablers and how will we address these challenges? There are four often interconnected enablers to driving efficiency and improving production. So first, artificial intelligence and machine learning, or as we'll refer to it, AI/ML. As the supply chain becomes more complex and generates more data, AI/ML can drive insight into these data sets through pattern recognition that can predict events such as equipment failure or preventative maintenance. Digitization of the supply chain. So unlike traditional supply chains, which are linear and siloed, digital supply networks are dynamic, interconnected systems that can readily incorporate ecosystem partners and evolve over time. It's also an essential component to enabling continuous production. So continuous production in biopharmaceutical manufacturing, continuous production takes a drug from its base ingredients to the final product with no stops in the process. With no need to shut down equipment and no downtime, medicines can get to patients sooner and costs are reduced. Finally, IoT technology. Most equipment used in plants are dumb devices with little or no connectivity. This creates data silos. IoT sensors can be retrofitted to equipment to liberate information giving the ability to stream data and enable real-time monitoring and predictive capabilities via AI/ML. So with that backdrop, I will hand off to Casper.
Thank you, Patrick. As Patrick said, I'm Casper. I represent Novo Nordisk, where I'm the Chief Technology Architect in Manufacturing IT. One of my responsibilities is to make sure that we apply the right technologies to solve our business needs. And just for those of you that don't know Novo Nordisk, we primarily deliver medicines in a global market within diabetes and hemophilia. Now I want to take you back to where it all started, what journey we have been through. It really started in 2016 when we got a new CEO coming in with a big goal of us having to increase our performance in manufacturing with 5% by 2020. And it was on existing manufacturing equipment, no new equipment. This was really due to the falling medicinal prices and the competition in our product portfolio, plus a requirement from the regulating bodies that they wanted us to look at new technology and apply that in order to gain more knowledge about our products and processes. That combined with another new guy coming in, our new CIO, he wanted to try the technologies. He wanted to test them out quickly to see if we could fail fast or win quick. We started to look at options to do advanced data analytics in our manufacturing areas. We deliberately called it analytics and not artificial intelligence, hence that was far too modern for an old industry. Along with the manufacturing optimization we had to do, we also needed to optimize the way IT is operated in our business, the services, the way they're delivered to the organization. We kind of saw that that was the first time we heard the cloud-first movement has started in our company. And just to give you a little bit of a background, today, Novo Nordisk has in our manufacturing areas around 2,500 unique IT systems. It's a lot of resources to maintain them and make sure they get patched every day. So there's no doubt that the cloud was at least an option for us. They're all predominantly sitting on an on-premise in data centers, storages, and we don't like to maintain all those boxes. We make medicines, we don't make IT. We also found that we have tons of legacy applications in our landscape. They're very expensive to eliminate and maintain. So for us, it's the key to spot technologies that can transform legacy setup into values fast. I see companies like AWS and their partners like Bigfinite to provide the tools that makes this possible. So back to the waste challenge in our manufacturing facilities. Since the early 2000s, we've been implementing and using a lot of performance tools to measure our equipment's efficiency, OEE. That, including a lean focus, has driven our OEE numbers up. So we're very efficient on many lines. But they're flatlining now, the OEEs. We need to do more and try new technologies to increase the OEE numbers again. 5 years ago, our financial group started up a deep dive into our production costs. They identified a lot of interesting things. The 6 waste drivers are listed on this slide, was identified. Some of them we can solve with our intelligence and data analytics program. The goal of that was really to give operators, including managers, an intelligent decision tool to actually predict issues using artificial intelligence and machine learning. I will say that it's also a maturity journey. Not all are ready. We do have some places where I walk into a site and all they want to see is a trend curve. They don't even have that today. So they're not ready for the advanced analytics journey yet. But we'll get there, and I'll talk more about that later. So why AWS and Bigfinite? We really wanted to make all of our data sources available for advanced analytics algorithm and in somehow a self-service, easy-to-do-it fashion. The ultimate goal was to predict process deviations, equipment failures, energy uses in due time so that we don't waste money. I often call all these data sources we have for our cemeteries because we haven't really put power to the data in it yet. Some of the things we focused on when we started to look at a platform was that we wanted a platform that could apply data from multiple sources. They needed to be able to do advanced analytics. That's the AI and ML we talk about. We needed those predictive capabilities. We needed the ability to import and export trained models from other sources. We needed something as simple as a dashboard editor. We need to send notifications to people when certain conditions arise that we don't want. We definitely wanted a software as a service solution. We do not want to maintain boxes anymore. We want to buy it as a service. And then at last, when you are in this industry, we needed to be qualifiable and validatable for a GXP environment. So before I jump into our case studies presentations, I just want to highlight what benefits we're already seeing. And remember, I can't talk about real numbers since we're publicly traded, but I can at least give you some ideas of where we're seeing the benefits coming in. When we look at energy, we know that we've been able to save up to 20% on doing smarter ventilation in one of our packaging areas. We're still building out the model, but 20% reduction on an air handling unit is actually significant on energy. We want to scale that, of course, to other units. We have an area where we reduce the number of false rejects on an inspection line via image recognition to around 0 false rejects. For pharmaceutical, that's 1 to 2% better line efficiency. For one of the case studies I will show today, we have demonstrated that we can increase our OEE with 1 to 2%, and for some that might not seem a lot, but for us it's a lot when you're already in the 85–90% area. I'll go through that in one of our case studies. We also have a case study where we have a potential savings of up to $1 million a year by reducing unplanned maintenance on a specific, very critical unit in a facility. It's a special case study, that's why we brought it along here. And going forward, we have lots of projects talking about the unplanned breakdown of units, especially air handling units in the clean areas. If we can save a batch or an air handling unit in an area producing an aseptic batch, it's one batch saved. It's a big number. We also see a lot of these pilots that we're executing right now that are easily transferable to other lines and units. So the scaling up is actually very, very easy, especially when you think about using AWS and Bigfinite technologies behind it. One area where we've seen more focus lately is task forces, and I have a case study on that as well today, where you have a low-performing equipment and you bring in a team of specialists that can actually start analyzing the data. So they pull in the data for all the sources and they start analyzing to see where the root cause really is. And we're still early, and we have some ideas of where we want to apply artificial intelligence to that, but I'll show you that in a minute. Back to the case studies. The first one, real-time failure diagnostics. It's on an assembly line, assembling the pen you see down in the right-hand corner. A line of such a type consists of up to 80 work processing stations. They all produce scraps. They all fail and stop sometimes. What the line was actually using today was a lot of paper to record all these stops and scraps, and you see that in the left lower bottom of the slide. And what we wanted to give them was a real-time view on a monitor like you see on the right-hand side up in the right corner, in order for them not to having to do all these paper updates every day. So we first set out with the purpose of case study 1. We really wanted to stabilize the OEE1, making sure that we were not whopping up and down over the control limits for OEE1. We wanted to really visualize real-time the stops and the scraps for the operators so that they could help, also the technicians could act faster and go to the right stops or the right components on the line to fix them. Some of the challenges when you start doing this is like, okay, where does this data come from? Are the sourcing systems set up correctly? Are they organized the right way? And also another challenge we found out is that right now, this paper process they had was actually pretty efficient. Even though it was on paper, they updated the numbers every 3 hours and printed new paper out and put it out to the manufacturing areas. So we had to beat the 3-hour time lag and go down to maybe every 10 minutes to show them the new data. Another challenge, since this was one of the first times we did this, was what should such a dashboard look like? There was actually no standard. So we had this one guy that had an idea, and then we started. And that will take me into some of the ways we delivered this project. This talks a little bit about how we, for all of our projects and in all the case studies I'm presenting today, approach them. we found out very quickly that we had to do an agile project execution approach. And that, of course, that was embraced by our CIO. We found out that you have to really do some mock-ups, some whiteboarding to try to design what end dashboards you want to see and what logics and algorithms you want to put behind all the visuals on your dashboards. And what we also found out that it doesn't have to be the final technology you use for that. You can use anything from Excel and whatsoever to do that, or even drawing them and taking pictures. So far for this project or this case study, we had three major sprints. The first one was really about getting the data collected and the initial mock-ups and ideas of what it looked like. First dashboards was then released, but we didn't really apply in analytics. We were just monitoring the data, and that spawned a lot of ideas on the shop floor to what else they would like to see. About a month ago, we applied a basic statistical model with control limits to identify equipment components that are trending a failing situation. That, again, alerts the operators to go and look at that component's workstation and fix that first. There'll be some screenshots of that later. And an initial saving was that just by applying the dashboards, we saved the 3-hour work that was done every day on updating these papers, and they were put out in the manufacturing area. And actually, we have also already now stabilized our OEE, and we have increased it a little bit. I'll come back to some of those facts. So what have we actually yielded? What results have we gotten out of this pilot here? There's no doubt that we are guiding the technicians to act faster and plan more accurate what they have to do on the line to make sure that it's stable and have a high OEE. Side note, we have removed the manual reporting. It's live. It's updated every 10 minutes in this case. We could even increase that if we could get to the data sources faster. We could do it every 5 or every minute if we wanted. So that talks about real time. So what we have done is that we are more proactive now, and we actually want to go into the predictive mode the next time. One thing I want to highlight with this one is that up in the right corner, there's a small widget that shows -28. That's actually minutes. This is a calculated indicator that tells the line operator how far behind, and some days ahead, of the daily target they are. So they know, if this was a positive number, that if they have a station that is failing a lot, and they know it takes 10 minutes to fix it, and if they're ahead of schedule with 10 minutes, they can easily schedule a fix of that station and still be on the production target for the day. That really helps them a lot to plan their day. What are we going to do next step with this? We are right now collecting the data, and we are just beginning to set up a training of a supervised machine learning algorithm that will determine the control limit even more narrow than we do with the basic statistics we have applied today. We would also add to that maintenance work order data so that we can correlate maintenance details with scraps and stop. And we want to use that to predict the future failures on the line more accurately, and also know more about our control limit so that we can fulfill the requirement from the regulatory bodies to know more about our processes and why we have our control limits the way we have. We also found out that going ahead in solutions like this, that when you show the dashboards to operators, they get more ideas about how they can see other visuals to even work faster and smarter. But you also have to be careful, because you have to end and go on to the next one. You have to stop where it makes sense. Another thing we have found with this one is that the minute we start showing this to other lines in our manufacturing environment, they all wanted the same solution. This was exactly what they needed. So I want to show you a little bit about our case study too. And now it gets more exciting, because now we're starting to use all of these new technologies in a combined way. We call it condition-based maintenance. We want to be predictive, but we'll start with condition-based. What we have done here is that we have applied a lot of new sensors to a existing, actually very old facility, and a unit in that facility that didn't have all the data signals already enabled through its control solution. So you could say that we have actually retrofitted a piece of equipment. Not a lot, but again, it's a lot of data points. We have added new temperature sensors, vibration sensors, power consumption meters to measure the electricity we're using, especially when you're using a valve or a motor or pump. And then also we applied some infrared cameras to look at the heat pattern on some of our motors, just to do pattern recognition. I think it's important to say on this slide, on this case study, that it's not cheap to retrofit, so you have to really select the right units to do it on. In this case, we have a positive ROI because we picked a unit that is really failing a lot and give us a lot of heartache with unplanned stops. And you know, all those unplanned stops, they always happen the day before New Year's Eve or something like that. We also had some challenges in this one. And again, retrieving all the data, understanding the data we get in, contextualizing the data was needed. I will say the optimal goal in this case here is to predict when it fails, and we want to have what I call a prediction of equipment failure. So like a counter on every equipment to say this equipment will fail in X hours if the operating condition stays the way it is right now. And one of the challenges that we see is that how long time do we really have to collect data to get enough data to apply the machine learning algorithms we want? 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, I don't know. And then the next question was always, is there no benefits then just by applying it? Yes, there will be benefits coming in immediately almost. What we saw was just having the visibility into your data sets gives you a lot of value. In this case, we already seen that we detected a leak just by having access and visibility to the systems. And the funny story here is that the leak was actually detected by the guys that were setting up the equipment. So they just mounted the camera and they mounted some sensors for vibration. And in the middle of that, one of them found out that there was a pump really doing some funky stuff. And they immediately called the gate in our company, and they walked to the facility, and they found out that we were pumping a lot of media out on the floor. That was stopped before we pumped too much out. So you will see benefits, no doubt about that. So the third case study I'm going to talk about is this task force type case studies we do. We did this on a packaging line, and the problem with the packaging line was really that it didn't meet its production targets. It was always behind, and nobody really knew what it was. And operators was blaming the IT systems on the line. IT people was blaming the operators for not being trained and knowing how to operate it. Mechanics blamed the line for not being very efficiently built. So there was a lot of indications, but no real clear understanding of what's really causing the line to be not being performing very well. So the challenge here is really we have a very complex setup. So we have to retrieve data, and all of these systems that I'm showing on the right-hand side is electronic at this site. So we're having warehouse data. This is AGVs coming in with materials. We have temperature sensors over the lines, in the lines. We have a lot of PLCs on the lines. We have an MES systems. We have an ERP planning systems. We have an infrastructure also giving data. And what we wanted to do here is really to take all of those data loggings and put them in to the platform and try to identify some patterns via some artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithms. And I will say that we were actually successful, and I'll come back to that now. So back to the results for the case study 3. By the use of these new technologies, we quickly got access to retrieve the real-time data. The historical data was a little bit harder, but we managed to load that into the systems, and that gave us a foundation for actually starting to do and apply some magic with artificial intelligence. We built a machine learning model via random forest regressor that can predict the number of pens produced per minute based on some other priority items. In our case, it was actually the standard deviation of the room temperature and the batch size that had the biggest impact on how effective the line was producing. And the majority of good performing batches was executing during the day shift. Well, That may not be a surprise to a lot of us, but at least the data now started to support our expectations that, yes, larger batch sizes was good. We need the right temperature. After all, it is packaging. We have paper. And the day shift is producing better than the night shift. Don't tell the night shift that. They'll just start to compete. We also was able to visualize some patterns that they couldn't understand before, because we started tracking and identifying the communication delays between the IT systems surrounding the line. That has already yielded some optimizations in the IT systems, and what we've already seen is that they are producing more effectively just because the systems are not hanging, they're producing, or they are actually doing the things in the right sequence now. They don't wait for an IT system to be ready. The IT systems are basically operating more smoothly now just because we started to monitoring the transaction between them. What we also did was, based on a principal component analytics method, we identified 10 batches that had just outperformed all the other batches, and we had a sample of 1,150 batches of that. That was 3 years historical data. So those 10 were just really, really the positive outliers. And what we're doing now is we are investigating why they actually perform so much better. And we want to identify 1 or 2 of them and combine them in to become the golden batch. And we want to start monitoring and displaying that on dashboards on the line so that we can secure that what they're running on the line right now is actually within the golden batch standard on all the parameters. Oh, by the way, we selected 150 batch characteristics to be analyzed in this CPA method. And they are now the baseline for how we want to produce on this line. So what's the next step for this? We actually want to implement a supervised machine learning to predict the issues on the line better. But for that, we really need the data to run in for at least 6, 12 months more to have enough data to train our model. And I think that's becoming a common thread in my presentation, is you need a lot of data and you need it over time to start applying a lot of these machine learning algorithms and AIs. So out of those 3 case studies I've showed you, we also had a lot of learnings, and I'll show you some of those here. First of all, technology is out there. Go play with it. It's available. It can easily be set up. One thing we found out is really that our data contextualization needs to be in place. We have so many silos, cemeteries of data out there. They are not necessarily lining up. We have examples with reject station not being named the same way in our OEE system as they were in our CMMS system for the work orders. So we have to do a lot of mapping in between. That just takes time and it's not needed. Agile project execution, our managers need to understand that they will lose control a little bit when you do agile. You might be done faster, but they will not know exactly what day you're done. They will not know exactly how much it will cost. But of course, we have the same goal in mind. Proximity of people is also important for agile. You need to have the people in the same place. You can't have IT in one building, process in another, and data scientists in a third one. Make sure they come into the same room and do the sprints. Another thing we found out is that it's far from everybody in our organization that is really mature enough to do advanced analytics. Like I said in the beginning, some just want a basic trend of a temperature curve. That's all they need. That's fine for them. Come back 1 year later, then they want to do some predictions around all the priority items around that temperature. Skills. It's really, really important, and it's hard to find the people that know exactly what algorithms and machine learning or AI you want to apply to a certain problem. Sometimes you might actually just document the evidence. So finding that balance and people who can actually identify the mathematics that will solve your problem, that's hard. Governance. Pick the right things first. We have governance in place for our program. I love that, but still it's very, very hard to find out what makes the most value initially. So try to do that. Try to at least estimate what kind of benefit you will get so other people in your governance setup can justify if you start with case A or case B in your pilot. Service level agreement. We are now moving from not having the IT equipment on premise by ourselves, maintaining it by ourselves, but getting it from a software as a service supplier. That's also new. That was at least new for us, and we need to learn how to operate such a service level agreement. It takes time the first time, but I think you'll get a lot of benefit in investing in that. Then there's another thing that a lot of the people in this area are talking about: one data lake versus many data lakes or many repositories. For me, and there is no one data lake. There are many data lakes, and even inside companies, I find many data lakes / repositories. At least I have learned that we should not try to build one big, giant data lake or sea that hosts everything, but we need to find mechanisms for all the data lakes to start sharing data. And that's also another good thing I see that AWS brings to the picture. They have those capabilities. They have those technologies that can do that. That was it for me. I hope you got a little bit of information of our journey with the 3 case stories and our learnings. And I know there will be questions coming up later. But before that, I want to hand over the word to Gilad from Bigfinite.
Thank you very much, Casper. At this point, I guess a number of questions may have already arisen, but I would like to take us a bit back at a high level before I go into what Bigfinite is and how we do things. It is kind of obvious that pharma manufacturing is volatile. There is issues around operational excellence and how we make the pharmaceutical industry more optimal. And that doesn't mean only from a operational excellence perspective, but there's also issues around quality and process understanding, etc. As I move along to the slides here, I don't intend to specifically answer all these questions, but just to make you aware that these are some of the things that our platform, Bigfinite, is trying to address. Things that can we trust our data? As Casper said, can we get rid of all this time that we spend around plumbing the data to make it available for analytics? And then things like, where do we start investing this Pharma 4.0? What are the technologies that we need to use first, etc. But before we, as I go into this presentation, I'd like to take you through some of the paradigm-shifting concepts that we bring to the table, and then into the platform itself, and say, how are some of these technologies used, and what do they feel and look like? We have to understand that this is a new paradigm. Pharma 4.0, Industry 4.0, it's a very different way of doing analytics and manufacturing intelligence. One of the things we're introducing is this technology called big data, as well as artificial intelligence and other things that were reviewed or talked about previously in this presentation or in the webinar. We've spent the last 30 or 40 years building these structures in an Industry 3.0 environment. We take data from different sources and we try to aggregate it in different ways and build these abstraction layers so people who need the data can use it. And anybody who's done this for a number of years knows how difficult and how much effort really goes into just getting to the point of using the data and also maintaining these multitude of different data sources in a way that can be useful. In this brave new world of big data and cloud computing, we're using the concept of a data lake. And data lake is essentially a way to store data at an atomic level, but also unstructured. And that really takes away from the necessary effort to do all the data plumbing. More than that, once we have the data in the data lake, we can use artificial intelligence to discover patterns within the data. And as Casper alluded to, sometimes you discover things that are obvious. For example, in this case, we can discover which data relates to what batch or which equipment. And that's a very important concept to understand. The other thing that is also important is that, as Casper also alluded to, many of the systems that we use are on-premise. We have to maintain these sophisticated databases and other systems, whereas in the cloud, we actually have everything in a cloud computing environment, which gives us this ability of elastic computing, but also the way a way to store, if you will, an infinite amount of data in these data lakes. Okay, so what does it feel or look like to reduce this data plumbing and using our Bigfinite system? So obviously the first thing we need to do is capture data and bring data into the data lake. We have the capabilities in our platform using something called data feeders to connect to a multitude of sources on your manufacturing shop floor and other enterprise systems to bring data into the data lake, and we do that in a fashion where we maintain data integrity. And I will not have time to go into the technical detail of how it's done, but it is important to note that we have patented technology to manage this data as GMP data in the cloud all the way from the point of the ingestions at the source. But it's not enough just to bring data into data lake. We need to do some pre-processing or we call that data alignment and process normalization. We're bringing data sources from time series data, other transactional data, complex data, and we need to prepare it such that it can be used for analytics across the platform and also the ability to put context on the data, because we as humans need that in order to understand the data better. Let's take a look at data contextualization in a data lake. What we have here is a simple representation of a data lake, and we're filling the lake with data as the little hose there represents. Once the data is in the data lake, we can start looking at data and do what we call auto-discovering or some discovery mechanism using artificial intelligence and other means to look at the data and see if we can see patterns within the data to give us the context. So we can, for example, get the system to tell us that this specific data set is part of all the data from this specific reactor, or it's part of a batch, etc. But that is not enough, and so we have provided within the Bigfinite platform a way to contextualize the data using what we call associations and other means, hierarchies, and that gives us the ability to manage the data or put context on the data using standards like ISA 8895, equipment hierarchies, etc., and any type of other contextual models as you want. The big difference here is that the data does not need to be moved or rearranged or restructured. We simply overlay context on top of the data in the data lake. So at this point, the data is ready. And we can start looking at the data. The first part of it is, as I said, just look at the data. We don't necessarily need artificial intelligence to discover some of the patterns and trends. And as Casper mentioned in some of the case studies, just the mere fact that we can overlay data on top of other data from different sources, we use not artificial intelligence but human intelligence to say, hey, that makes sense. We can do something about it. But we can also take it a bit further. I mean, this is truly a manufacturing intelligence system, and with that, we can use that to do dashboarding, etc., but also to solve or to give you the ability to do your product quality reviews and bring the data together in a simpler fashion and an easier fashion to solve or give you the ability to do your traditional tasks as well as do analysis, etc. But that's not enough, because this is a system that has AI ML capabilities, so let's look at that. Okay, so now we're looking at the predictive capabilities of the Bigfinite system. So we've gone through at this point and visualized the data, we've used the data, but now we can start building predictive models using the data in the data lake about how the production system is going to behave. And I think Casper showed quite a few nice examples of that. But we can use this predictive capabilities not only to look at packaging lines. In fact, you can take a look at a multitude of different types of operations all the way down to, for example, bioreactor processes, but also at a higher level across the logistics of the plant to try and understand where the variability is and how things are going to behave in the future. And I think that's the true power of AI ML that the platform brings, and also what's going to take us truly into this new era of Industry 4.0 and Pharma 4.0. I also wanted to give the audience here just a brief view of more of a technical structure of the platform to the people who are interested. At a high level, it's important to understand that this is truly new technology. We're using all the capabilities of the Amazon Cloud and services. It is not implementations of servers in the cloud. It's truly a serverless environment. It's software as a service. There's nothing installed on site, etc. Using unstructured data in something called object storage. As I said before, it's a SaaS platform on the AWS Cloud. But what we do provide on top of that is what we call certified solutions. So we have the capabilities within the platform to build solutions to address specific issues. In the case studies, each of these was a specific solution. These solutions can be managed in something similar to an app store. We call it a solution store. And you can have solution stores for your company, but we also, as part of the platform, provide what we call certified solutions that are general ways that we have seen people solve specific problems that are in the industry. All of these are done. The reason we call them certified is because they do follow a true GMP workflow, so you can manage which solutions are being used, etc., with full audit trail. Towards the end here, I just wanted to highlight a few things, feedback from the industry. One is Gartner has identified us as a 2018 Cool Vendor, and that it's kind of a commercial on our part, but it means what they're saying is that it's a very unique solution to address the life sciences, the pharmaceutical industry. We have, as Gartner said, ready to use content, solutions, and the platform itself manages data as GMP data in the data lake. In fact, we've also presented our technologies around AI and the fact that we can manage GMP data in the cloud environment to the FDA as part of their ETT program. They've responded very strongly and said this is a very unique technologies that they feel are going to change the way that we look at product quality in the future, and we're working with them around or working with them to understand whether the regulation is okay as is, if there's some ways that we need to redo the regulation or work with other organizations to give best practices around use of AI and use of cloud in the future. So to sum it up, Bigfinite, we call it the Pharma 4.0 Accelerator. I just wanted to highlight a quote from our CEO. He says that we are pharma guys doing IT and not software engineers trying to do something in the pharma industry. And that really, I think, is important to understand. We all are, the company itself and the people working in the company are all from the pharmaceutical industry. We understand what GMP is. We understand the problems of the industry. We've been there for a long time. And what we're trying to do is make it possible and easier for the pharmaceutical industry to embrace Pharma 4.0, to gain those order of magnitude productivity increase that this new, the fourth industrial revolution gives you. And just go over some of the highlights here. It is a manufacturing intelligence platform with advanced analytics, a new generation of that. We give you the ability to capture data through IoT technology. It makes the data ingestion very easy. It's GMP compliant. It's patented technology to manage GMP data in the cloud, and that puts to rest all the issues around data integrity, etc. The contextualization that I've described is pretty unique in how we do things. Getting insights with AI is also something that's unique in the GMP industry, or the way that we do it. We give you certified solutions out of the box. And really, at the end, faster path to value. And that's the accelerator that I wanted to emphasize again here. I think with that, that sums up my part of the presentation, and we're probably ready to go to Q&A.
Okay, so let's move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar. There's still time to submit your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We've already got lots of great questions, and we will try to get to as many as possible. Okay, so the first question, I think it's going to be probably for you, Casper, which is, has your company had any concerns about having GXP data in the cloud?
Patrick, thank you for answering that. I would rather say I would prefer to have GXP data in a cloud where I know that it's a big IT group maintaining them, making sure that they're backed up the right way and they're always online when I need them. So no, we don't have any concerns about having GXP data in the cloud.
Okay, thanks for that. Another question, again, probably for you, Casper. Do you plan to validate this solution?
I'm glad you asked that question, Patrick. Yes, we do plan to validate the solution, and that's exactly why when we looked at the options out there, we found something that has thought about pharma and GXP from the beginning. Makes it easier for me to actually validate it for my needs, because I know very soon people will start making GXP decisions on the data that we present to them on dashboards or when we do the analytics parts. So yes, we plan to validate it, and I'm not quite done yet, but I'm in the middle of the process.
Great, thanks. And then another interesting question's come in. So, and probably Casper, you and Gilad could speak to this one, but have you had to open or expose your algorithms to the FDA to get them on board with the outputs?
I have not been. We have not been inspected by the FDA on these algorithms yet. So no, that's for me not. But I know Gilad has another answer.
This is a topic of a great debate, and how you trust an AI algorithm, how you validate it. There is no current guidance. There's emerging guidance around being able, or how you do the validation of AI algorithms. Our platform is open. We try to implement something called AI explainability and transparency. The algorithms are not a black box. You can see and available or documented is the test data set, the training data set, and also the algorithm and how it works. So it should be easy enough to do it. Obviously, we just are missing the guidance of what they need in order to say that you're okay to use an AI algorithm in a GMP environment.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
And if I can add to that, none of the algorithms or the mathematics used here is brand new. I mean, a lot of it was invented back in the 50s. We just haven't moved it into our industry yet.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thanks. So another question. So what is the first step towards setting up a smart manufacturing system like this, high level? And that would go to Gilad or Casper, yeah. Why don't you answer first, Casper, and then Gilad can weigh in on it.
For us, as I mentioned, it really started when our CEO came in and put an extreme pressure on our performance targets. So in my role, I'm looking for new technologies every day, trying to see if I can find something that matches our craving for better performance. And it was obviously simple for me to go to a company like Bigfinite and AWS, because it took me a week and I had my environment up and running. So that was easy. All the hard part is getting all your data structures in place and convincing the organization to start using this. So, I mean, the journey was out of business need, and I would say setting up the environment was pick the one that did it the fastest way so you could accelerate your journey. And that's what I found with a cloud-based solution like this.
Right. Okay. And then another question, for packaging, have you managed this on a serialization, DSCSA, FMD level?
Yes, the line we are running the case study on is a serialized line. And that was actually one of the things we wanted to find out. Out of those 10 batches, half of them was serialized batches. 10 batches that was actually outperforming, half of them was serialized batches. And we still have to find out why that went so well with the serialized batches compared to the non-serialized.
Got it. Okay. And then another one, is the AWS Cloud a dedicated instance?
For me, I can answer this. Yes, we have a virtual private cloud, so we own the data legally.
And just to add, that is the way we set up. This is the pharma industry, and so basically, every one of our customers gets a virtual private cloud. In fact, contractually, they own the data, and it's all the security that comes with that, and the AWS mechanisms, obviously.
Got it. Great. And there's still, and just for folks still on the line, there's still time to submit questions. So please do that again on the option there on your screen. And this one is probably directed towards you, Casper. But the question is, couldn't you just build this on premise? Why use the cloud?
Yes, you can do. I mean, you can do everything on premise if you want to. But for me, I'm a pharma guy. I don't want to own IT equipment. And it will probably take me at least 6 months to put up similar equipment on premise than what I got in a week by almost, and maybe this sounds too simple, giving out my credit card to a company like Bigfinite, and they set up the virtual private cloud for me, and I'm unrolling. So yes, I could do it on premise, but I would never do that.
I think we have to also add that the cloud computing with elastic computing, these running big data and these AI algorithms requires such computing power that you simply will not practically be able to do on premise, especially not in an elastic way. So you'd have to maintain a supercomputer on premise if once in a while you need to run an AI algorithm that requires that extra capacity, and you get that elastically in the cloud.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So another question here that kind of correlates to the JXP question earlier, which is, so how do you manage validation IQ/OQ on software upgrades? And again, Casper, Gilad, you could both probably weigh in on this question.
So for me, the platform itself, the IQ/OQ of that is taken care of by the supplier, Bigfinite in this case. I set up an auditing system, and I have a service level agreement with them. So they do the qualification, you can say. They do all the testing, and therefore I trust when they make a new release of the platform, it's all in balance. All I almost get is a notification that now we have a new release, and they have tested everything for me. So I kind of push that back to them. Then, of course, on top of that, when I build my own solutions, connect my own data sources, I have to do IQ and when I connect my data sources to make sure that they are connected properly and I have the integrity of the data coming into the cloud. The minute the data is in the cloud, the platform takes care of the integrity of it. And of course, when I build dashboards, I have to maintain control of them, but that's also what Gilad alluded to. There is, inside the platform, is built in a revision control of your solutions. So they get certified, and when they're certified and they sit there, they are almost untouchable. You can't change anything to them. It's like a recipe you approve for your MES system, and it stays in a certain locked revision. You can only make a new version of it. You cannot play around with the old one. And of course, I need to have an IQ of those solutions so I know that they're locked. But I get a lot of support from the platform and the way they manage the data and the integrity of it.
Got it. Great. Thank you. And this one, Gilad, probably would be directed towards you, but the question is, so what production areas or problems do you see customers addressing first?
Yeah, I don't think there's a clear answer to that. I think, there's a number of things that are important. The first being, GMP data versus non-GMP data. There's a tendency to kind of skirt around what we call GMP data or holy data. Because there may be more friction within the organization. At the same time, typically the GMP data is where as Casper calls it, the gold is. That's where a lot of the knowledge about the process, knowledge of that is. So it is important to get. But in general, I would say that because analytics is something that typically process development and MSAT people are using every day, there tend to be more interest at that level to look at process development, scale up, and tech transfer type stuff. But at the same time, I wouldn't, I can't see a pattern there yet. It's all over the place.
Gilad, if I can back that one up, when one of the sources for where we find our projects and cases, that's really going to our lean community. So everybody working with the lean community, they want to optimize, and they have all the cases, and they're all over our manufacturing area. So it's from API manufacturing and all the way into the fill and finish and packaging areas. They are all over, and they all want to optimize. So just get your lean group involved, and you will find your cases.
Great, great. And then another question has come in, and of course we know it's people, process, and technology, so this hits the people part, but who do you typically have to convince inside a company to adopt this technology? Who would I have to convince internally to adopt? And maybe Casper, you could kind of answer that one, and then Gilad could weigh in with any color commentary.
Yeah, who do I have to convince? First, I thought it was the manufacturing directors, but actually not, because they have these performance goals. So they're open to almost any idea that can increase their performance. You'll be surprised to hear that in our case, most of the constraints and resistance came from our own IT groups. They were not really happy about this concept of having software as a service initially. They were used to protecting that everything was protected by them and done by them. So I would say IT was the ones I had to convince most. That's my case.
Okay. Gilad, what are you seeing?
Yeah, again, I don't think there's a specific pattern, and every organization is different. But in general, I would have, you have to. It is new technology. It's a paradigm shift. So using just the typical lean approach, the Toyota approach. You have the early adopters. You have to find them that are willing to try this and show some success. And then you have the bulk of the people there. They're followers, and they're gonna come around for the ride at some point. And of course, lastly, you have to find out the people that don't want to and isolate them, right? The people that Toyota calls the concrete heads. That don't want this technology in any case. And I think that applies to any kind of change manager, any kind of new technology.
If I can add
Great.
to our story, what we did initially was that when we built a proof of concept quickly, so we had something with us when we presented the concept for people, so that they saw the actual product, they could feel it. They didn't see all the magic happening behind the scenes in the cloud, but they saw the front end, and that's what they liked.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So, just to be respectful of everybody's time, this will be our final question. We've had a lot of great questions today. Couldn't get to them all, but we'll be getting back to everyone who submitted personally after the webinar. So, this question, maybe Gilad, if you could take it, and if Casper, if you could weigh in with your comments. Gilad, this one really kind of goes back to why AWS in terms of Bigfinite and who they use as a cloud provider. But the question is, does the solution comply with the backup requirements for data recovery and GXP contingency planning and multi-country requirements for data stores?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And that is provided as part of the AWS infrastructure. You really, just the way you use cloud technology, you actually don't necessarily need a backup. The data is actively backed up based on a configuration up to, I don't know if it's even up to, it's more than 9 different physical locations, can be up to 3 different geographies, and it's all part of the infrastructure that comes with AWS.
Great. Casper, any perspective on that question?
No, we had the same thoughts initially, and we picked our primary data center for storage. And then I know it's backed up in 3 other locations. I always have my data online. I never think about things like archiving. That was such a huge deal in this industry and towards the regulatory bodies. You don't think about archiving here. It's always online. It's kept there forever, and it's available. So, yeah, no concerns.
No concerns. Great. All right, well, we're almost at the top of the hour. We're 1 minute away or less. So on behalf of Amazon Web Services, I want to thank you for attending this Fierce Markets webinar and submitting all the great questions. Also, would like to thank our speakers from Bigfinite and Novo Nordisk, so Casper and Gilad for participating. And just remind everyone, this webinar has been recorded, so you'll be able to access the recording within 24 hours using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. So thank you again for joining, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.